Morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Aruba Instant On. Today's host is Reggie Johnson, and he is their channel systems engineer in North America, and he will be presenting today. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box, and Reggie will answer them at the end of today's presentation. Reggie, thank you so much for being here with Microcom again today. We greatly appreciate learning about the ongoing products and services you have to offer. I am very happy to have you with us, and I believe our audience members are as well. So please go ahead and take it on over.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Julie. I always appreciate working with you and your wonderful introduction. It really helped get me going. So, hi, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. So, as Julie said, we got a new introduction to the Aruba Instant On 1960 line I want to talk to you guys about. And I know some of you guys, when I get into this, are going to say, why didn't you guys come out with this a while ago? Well, I kind of talk about that a little bit too. Um, so, for the agenda, we'll start off talking about just a basic market overview. I'll talk about this new switch introduction to specifically the 1960 line of switches. And I know some of you guys may not remember specifically everything that the 1960 line of switches encompasses. So I'll talk about that as well. And then I'll talk about some of the additional switch features that this particular model has. We'll talk about some of the use cases and where it fits, and I think they'll be pretty obvious on some of those things. And then I'll cover some of the instant on benefits just as kind of a refresher for the entire switching and AP portfolio. And then we'll talk about a few tools and resources, and I'll answer some questions if you guys have them. But before I get into that, one of the things I'd love to talk about is hey, for once again, for 5 of the last 6 years, we were number one with the CRN annual report card. So we were a winner once again. I think we've actually won like 4 years in a row now. And that encompasses things like product innovation, product quality, reliability, the technical innovation of the product, as well as how we partner with our partners and the cloud services and management capabilities that we have. So, we're happy to be number one once again. So now that I'm done bragging about our status, right, in the SMB space, by the way, we're number one in enterprise networking as well. So it's not just SMB. And you guys know from me presenting to you that our SMB product is basically evolved from our enterprise line, which is one of the things that's actually made it so relevant and such a great product in the marketplace. So before we get into talking about the actual product, let's talk a little bit about some of the small business trends and kind of, covering the market overview. And I know I've hit this with you guys before, but just as kind of a refresher. So when we say small, medium business, the small part of that is that less than 100 user space, which is primarily where most of the Instant On product line fits. But you'll see, like with the 1960, because of some things like stackability, et cetera, and some of the capabilities of our access points and how we've kind of grown with that we really move into that medium business space as well, which we consider that 100 up to about that 500 user space. But this is actually showing just that small business space environment. We've grown, which is growing at about 8% per year. Notice that a larger, about 65% of that is actually wired, right? And the reason I point that out to you guys, I know a lot of you are selling wireless, and just like a lot of the traditional folks that came from Aruba were very comfortable selling wireless, that sometimes they forget to add wired, and wired is actually a larger footprint from a sales perspective. So don't forget to add those switches to your wireless sales, right? They may not have something already to attach those access points to. As we look at continuing with kind of the marketplace trends, right, for SMB, and we're seeing a lot of these numbers continue to go up, but 79% of the SMBs agree that the right tech solutions are important and can definitely improve their business in uncertain times, such as we had with COVID, was kind of, it really helped a lot of companies realize that. 69% now, and that number's continued to go up over the last several years, are likely to purchase cloud solutions. So they're not looking for just cloud software applications, but also they want to be able to manage their devices using the cloud as well when possible. And then 30% of the SMBs are really prioritizing, management of subscriptions. And that's not an issue we have with Instant On because there are no subscriptions with Instant On. Now, on our enterprise line, it's different, but with Instant On, there's no subscriptions. And then 42% are purchasing laptops and desktops outside of their normal traditional refresh cycles because technology is moving so fast. And now you're seeing things like, we had just 1 gig was very popular for a long time. Now you're seeing 2.5 gig and 5 gig and 10 gig is kind of a multi-gig option. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about here. So if you look at our small business wired portfolio, right, and a lot of these I've talked about recently in some of the past presentations I've given to you guys. But we have in our Instant On product line, we have an unmanaged line of switches, which are our 1430s. They're gigabit switches, they're PoE and non-PoE models, and they're all fanless. And these are unmanaged, so they're not able to be managed by the cloud or even locally managed. They're simply true plug and play switches. And there's some really small environments typically you'll see where that's a good fit for. Moving on up to our smart managed portfolio, we've got our 1830 series of switches, which are cloud managed, can also be locally managed as well. And that's the same with all the rest of these products as I move up the stack here. They're PoE plus models. Some of these have partial PoE in which only the first half of the ports um, support PoE, right? And that's a cost savings element. But these are basic layer 2 managed switches, and these are 1 gig with 1 gig uplinks. So you can have fiber 1 gig uplinks with these as well. As we move on up into the 1930, now we're getting into some more advanced feature set. The 1930 series of products is really the flagship products that we typically lead with when making recommendations to customers after they purchase the access point or along with the access point. Um, and they have full support of PoE across any port that you plug into, and then there are uplinks of 1 gig or 10 gig SFP plus uplinks as well. And there are multiple options within the 1930 family again, and these are have also layer 3 capability in addition to the basic features that you get with the 1830. There's some additional security features as well as they'll do basic static routing. The 1960 basically encompasses all those features of the 1930, but then bring some additional things in. And one of the things that you see highlighted up there is the fact that these are stackable, right? So I can have up to 4 of these in a stack, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. There's PoE plus support, which is the 30-watt standard. There's also PoE plus plus support, which is the BT standard, which means they'll support devices up to 60 watts. So when you look at things such as some lighting that works on PoE and things like that, some of these advanced security cameras that require more than that 30 watts, the 1960 is the product that you'd want to position for that. And these have 1 gig and 10 gigs, so they're SFP plus uplinks. There's also 10 gig copper ports on these as well. There's several different models within that product line. Now, our latest edition, and I'm going to talk about now, has support for multi-gig, right? Which in this case is up to 2.5 gig ports, right? And those same ports can be used for support for up to 60 gigs worth of PoE support as well. So you think about some of the more modern access points, that becomes pretty much a standard requirement in order to get full features and functionality. And they enhance this part of the reason why 2.5 gig really matters, right? So when we look at some of the new Wi-Fi standards that are here, like Wi-Fi 6, and then some that are coming, such as you're seeing more Wi-Fi 6E products, right? and also Wi-Fi 7 is on the way. So that requirement over time, as we move toward, you can see the forecast here for up through 2027, right? Is there's going to be a requirement for more bandwidth at the edge, right? With 2.5 gig, a lot of the access points that are available today actually have that requirement. Even the product that we came out with several months ago, which is what I kind of alluded to earlier. So our AP25 and our AP22 uh, all have 2.5 gig ports on them. The interesting thing was we didn't have a switch that supported that yet, right? So now we do with this particular model of the 1960 switch, and it's stackable with the others, and we'll talk about that. So what do they do? You know, why do customers need them? What are some of the key features? So some of the things that I just talked about. So you're starting to see more desktops that have NICs that will support 2.5 gig. We talked about the access points and the increase in the Wi-Fi connectivity that's required. The last thing you want is to have a switch that has support for 2.5 gig because of all the clients that are connecting to the access point, right? And then you don't have support. You all of a sudden your switch becomes your choke point, right, or your bottleneck. So elimination of that, right? So we talked about the lighting, security cameras, et cetera, that also have that additional requirement for the Class 6 PoE. Also, more bandwidth, a requirement for many of those as well. So you see, and ultimately 2.5 gig also gives us kind of a cost-effective way, not so that, we're not having all 10 gig ports. Even these switches do have a few 10 gig ports actually on them. 2.5 is a lower cost option, right, that can be used to connect those access points or those advanced speed desktops or laptops that gives them an option to plug in directly on those products as well. So as we look at some of the key features, so as I talked about with the switches, so the 1960 series are cloud manageable. They can also be locally managed, and they can also be uh, stacked as well, right? And that's in both formats, whether or not they're locally managed or whether or not they're cloud managed. They can be stacked either way. We talked about the 10 gig uplink ports. We talked about the various, you've got 4 2.5 gig ports. You've got, uh, and then you've got 8 1 gig ports, right? And then you've got an additional, there are 10 gig port uplinks as well. And I'll kind of go through that in the next couple slides. There's a total PoE budget of 480 watts for this switch. So you can actually have a combination of devices that support 60 watts per port, right, on 4 ports, and then the others that support 80 watts, support 30 watts per port, and then you'll still be within that 480 watt PoE budget. These also have a nice luggage tag on them, which is just a tab that unfortunately you can't see on this slide because it only shows half the picture, but it's just a tab that you can pull out that shows the serial number and the MAC address of the switch. So that if you've got the switch in a stack with other switches, an administrator wouldn't have to go behind the rack, right, to identify this particular product. And then we talked about some of the robust security capabilities of the 1960, as well as there's some that also have a fanless design. This one in particular is a fanless product. So again, I kind of walked through a lot of this, but this is again cost effective, multi-gig with the 2.5 gig support for class 4, class 6 PoE, right? This is really meeting your higher bandwidth applications. We talk about the stackability. There's also a lifetime warranty. I'll cover a little bit more about that along with some of the additional support options that you guys definitely should be recommending with this product. So you see a picture of the product here, and over to the left there, you can see the orange luggage tag I talked about. That just simply pulls out. Very simple, easy to pull out there. And then if you look at the switch, the first 4 ports on the left are going to be your 2.5 gig ports. You'll see them kind of highlighted by the gray tab up above the furthest one to the left there. And then the last 8 there are going to be your 1 gig ports. And then there's 10 gig copper ports here. And then right next to those, there's the option for 10 gig fiber ports. So all in total, you actually have 16 ports on this switch that can actually be active at the same time. So as I mentioned, these are stackable, and you can mix and match these various products in a stack together. So it doesn't have to be all of one type or just a particular type of the models that stack together. You can kind of do a mixing and matching of those. Now, these support what we refer to as true stacking, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means on the next slide. So when you look at local stacking, right? So what we're referring to when we say local stacking is meaning we can connect these switches together using either 1 gig or 10 gig connections, and they need to be like across all of the switches that you're stacking. And then notice what you see here is a connection from the one on the top to the one back on the bottom, right? So that's a complete stack. With local stacking, that means we're also managing these switches locally and not in the cloud. Now, remember, with our switches that are manageable, they can be managed locally, right? Meaning not manageable in the cloud, or they can be managed in the cloud. Our APs in the Instant Online can only be managed in the cloud, right? So when you look at local stacking, basically what you get is the ability to see all these switches as a single device within the cloud with is the ability to manage these as a single device. However, what local stacking does, it allows you to do something called distributed link aggregation. So let's say I had a server connected that I needed to have that had 2 network cards in it. I could connect those off of different ports on each one of these switches as a form of redundancy. However, in cloud managed stacking, so if you're managing these in the cloud, all of these will appear to be as a single entity. However, I can't do that distributed link aggregation. I could not have a connection off of 2 different switches going to something like a server or another or another set of switches. It would have to be 2 ports coming directly off the same switch. So the primary benefit of cloud managed stacking is basically having these, being able to see them as a single entity with.
Hello, Reggie, it's Julie. I'm going to chime in. Seems that we may have lost audio. Can you check on your end?
Okay, I think I'm okay here. Can you hear me? Julie?
Reggie, one more time, if you could check your audio on your end.
Yeah, it seems to be okay. Julie? Hello? Hello? Hello, Julie? Julie?
You're popping in and out for me, Reggie. Can you, yeah, I'm here. Can you double check on your end? Okay, it sounds like we got you back.
Can you hear me now? Julie?
Yes,
You can hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to try to just go through my audio speakers. I'm not sure what happened to my headset there.
Thank you. I think that alleviated the problem.
Okay, all right. So I'm not sure exactly where I got cut off. Um,
Just start
So,
with where the screen says local stacking. Just start right there. That would be great.
okay, so with these switches, with the 1960 line of switches, what you've got is what we refer to as local stacking, which means that these products are not being managed in the cloud. You just want to have these in a stack, and notice you can actually, here I'm showing an example of 4 actually connected in a stack, right? Which is the maximum you can have in a 1960 line of products. You can stack these either using all the 1 gig or 10 gig, but there needs to be like connections between those, right? And notice in this case, we've got what we refer to as a redundant stack. So the one on the top actually connects back around to the one on the bottom, right? So if there's a failure, it's not noticeable to the actual user. Now with these, in doing that, with it being local stacking, so if I had something, let's say like a server that was connected that had 2 network cards in it, with local stacking, I can do what's referred to as distributed link aggregation. So I could actually have a port connected off of one switch and another port connected off of another switch, all going to that server, or perhaps it's another switch, but that would be a fully redundant link there because it's actually going to 2 separate switches in that stack. With cloud managed stacking, right? So if you're managing these in the cloud, and you have these in a stack, you don't have that same capability. We cannot do the distributed link aggregation. What I could do is have 2 ports connected off the same switch running to that server or to another set of switches, right? So it's a little bit different there. So it becomes just management from seeing them as a single entity and not what we refer to as local stacking or true stacking, as that's referred to, where you can do what I refer to as distributed link aggregation. Now, if you look at the hybrid stacking, what this is actually talking about is being able to use the 10 gig model in the 1960 line along with the 1 gig model and stack those using the 10 gig ports here in a stack. And so this is just showing having different models of switches that can be supported in that stack. The 2.5 gig model that I talked about could also be in the stack as well, but your limitations is the same, which is up to 4. And the reason we point that out is because in the series that preceded this product line, the 1950s, they did not have the ability to do this hybrid stacking. They had specific models that only stack with other like models. Not the case with the 1960 line. So also, and this was a somewhat later add to the Instant On product line of switches. So we came out with some Instant On transceivers and DAC cables that are supported within the Instant On line. We were using our enterprise line of cables and transceivers to connect these various products in the Instant On product line. The problem is there was a huge cost difference between that and what we have now with these with the new 10 gig as well as 1 gig transceivers that we have available now for the Instant On product line. And the other benefit is these have been tested. They're branded Instant On, and to work in the Instant On products. Now, these are not to be used to work in third-party products. They're not going to be supported that way, right? But this is within the Instant On line of products. And we also have 1 meter and 3 meter DAC cables that are supported for connections between the 1930 and the 1960 switches. So let's take a look at some of the use cases and topologies and where you'll likely to see like the 1960s. So keep in mind, I told you guys, so really you can kind of see this by the port counts, right? And being able to have 4 in a stack, that we kind of get beyond that 100 user space, right, for a small business. So now this really moves us up more into the medium business space. In this case, we've got the 10 gig model of the 1960 really acting as an aggregator there in the main campus. We've got a stack of the other traditional 1960s, right, the regular ones that aren't aggregators right? The access switches there, and notice in some instances we've got the AP25, and we have the ability to support that AP25 on a 2.5 gig ports on the new model, as you can see an example there at the main campus, right, as well as the AP22. And then in the auditorium, gym, cafeteria area, we also have another smaller stack, only 3 in a stack there, along with those like access points being able to connect there. So this really gives us the ability to expand into larger environments beyond that.
Reggie, it's Julie. Can you check your audio once more? You're cutting out.
Okay, Julie, let me see here. Can you hear me? Julie? 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 Julie?
Hi, Reggie. It seems that I might be the only one with some audio issues.
Okay.
Please continue on. I will, when you turn it over to me, I'm hoping I can hear you at that point.
Okay. Okay. So again, so this is an example that's an education example again with some variety here, as you can see. And then this is an example of a tech startup. Obviously, they want the latest and greatest here. So this is a very simple configuration showing a couple of 1960s with some advanced APs. In this case, it's actually higher end desktops that are connected, but you can see some of the APs there as well. So it's that potential support for 2.5 gig hardwired devices, laptops, desktops, etc., workstations, and also APs, and then additional power budget for things such as the access points, lighting, etc. So tech startups obviously are going to want the latest and greatest in technology, right? And then here's another example showing medical facilities, kind of the same types of examples here. They also show something unique where we've got an 1830 switch, so kind of mixing and matching different models, where that 1830 actually has a PoE port on it, so it can actually take PoE in and actually be powered via PoE. I think that's the device that you see down here in the lower right, the switch in the lower right there. It can be powered via PoE and provide connectivity for clients in that particular type of environment. So these are just a couple of different environments where you've got a requirement for enhanced throughput or PoE, et cetera, whether or not it be wired or wireless, and how the 1960 2.5 gigs a great fit in this environment. So if we look at the Instant On brand promise of product, so simplicity, which is something we've been known for with this particular product line. So if you look at the simplicity of being able to configure this or do your initial deployment and management using either a mobile app, and that's Android or Apple, depending upon the type of device you have, as well as management via a cloud-based portal with Instant On. And that's for our APs and switches. All right, and then we got built-in security, capabilities, things like access control lists when it comes to a wired perspective, and support for things like DHCP snooping. And then extraordinary performance, we talked about not just support. We actually have still selling our legacy Wave 2, 802.11 AC Wave 2 access points, as well as the more current Wi-Fi 6 APs, which is what we're definitely selling a lot more of now. And now with the addition of multi-gig to the switching line, we had ability to support those better. There are no hidden fees with Instant On. As I mentioned earlier, there's no subscription fees, no licensing fees, which really helps keep that lower total cost of ownership that customers like. We've been a trusted vendor in this space as Aruba in the enterprise space, and now moving this product down into the small, medium business space for the last 21 years with superior hardware and software. And we have an outstanding warranty as well as a great Instant On support community, and we increase the warranty on our APs to make us the better fit as opposed to the opposition. So we've got your back, whether or not it's having a solid warranty, or if you want to increase the support on that, which is definitely recommended from a switching standpoint, you can add the option of a 3-year or 5-year support, whichever fits your customer best. That will give them a true next business day arrival from a hardware replacement standpoint, as opposed to next business day ship as it was before. The other benefit is it's going to allow that 24/7 phone support to extend beyond that 90 days to the service support of 3 or 5 years. So that's huge. The other things actually stay the same. You still get lifetime chat. You still get software support, right? Those are good for the life of the product. And then there's also a transceiver DAC warranty as well, which will carry over to that foundation care standard if you buy those upgrades, as those products just being a part of the switch. So for tools and resources, this is a slide that I put together. I know you guys have seen this one before, right? Showing all the switches and their basic features and functionality. So if you look at, for example, with the 1960, you see some of the additional things you get here. Notice I said there's one model of smart rate, multi-gig or 2.5 gig, whatever you refer to it as. And then there's also support for PoE plus, as well as stacking support. That's the big differentiator with the 1960 as opposed to the 1930, which also has a strong feature set as well. And then here's a link to more information about the 1960 series with a little bit more details there, data sheets, etc. And that's pretty much it. So sorry for the connection issues. Julie, I hope you're back now.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Reggie.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm open to any questions anyone might have.
Thank you so much, Reggie. And my apologies. I think I might have been the only one with the audio issue, but we're back now. So yes, wonderful presentation. Greatly appreciate it. Let's get started with the first question. You talked about the switches being stackable, and that's the first question. Are they stackable? And you did go into some detail about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there anything else you need to add? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add, thanks, Julie. So the 1960, you can have up to 4 to stack. It can be, you can mix and match any switch in that model as a part of that stack. The caveat is the connections between the switches in the stacks need to be like, right? So either 1 gig or 10 gig, right? You can't do stacks with both.
Thank you, Reggie. Great. Thank you again. Let's see. Next question here. Do the switches support quality of service features?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Next question here. Can you discuss the energy saving features of these switches?
So from an energy saving standpoint, I guess we do have some energy saving capabilities, such as being able to control, like when you want those ports functional, that would be one of those, particularly from a PoE standpoint. There's also support for that standard. I think it's the BZ standard, where if you got ports that aren't, where there's no requirement for power, they kind of go in an idle mode, which is a way to actually conserve power as well. So those are really the two primary ways that we do that. And that's on really all the managed switches. I don't think, actually, it could be on the unmanaged as well, but not that I can recall at the moment.
Thank you for that, Reggie. Next question here for you. What kind of network management tools are compatible with these switches?
Yeah, so if you're doing just some generic basic management, there's some tools out there that will probably work if they're in local mode. Outside of that, from a cloud, if they're in cloud support if they're in the mode to be supported using the cloud, then it's only going to be manageable using our cloud portal, right, or our application right on your mobile device.
Thank you, Reggie. Next question here for you. What is the ease of deployment for these switches in a network?
Oh man, so that is one of the beauties of Instant On, and for some of you guys that were probably on the last webinar that I did, we did a demo, right, using the application on the mobile phone. There's also a one that you can actually access the cloud portal using your web browser, but using the mobile phone, I can simply barcode scan the device or put in the serial number of that device. And for example, let's say I talked about stacking today, I could do that with one switch in that stack, and all the switches in that stack would automatically be discovered and added to the network, right? If I wanted to do that, and that's just basically doing this on my mobile phone. Within the actual cloud portal, obviously I don't have the ability to barcode scan there, but I could type in the serial number there and actually do it from there as well. So it makes deployment real simple and easy. As a matter of fact, I think in the demo, and this is what we do commonly, if we have switches and APs all together, literally you plug everything in. If it gets a DHCP address and has access to the cloud, then literally you can discover one device and all the others will be automatically discovered, and then they go through their whole sync mode on that particular network, and you're done, right? So it's as simple as it gets in the industry, trust me.
Thank you so much, Reggie. Last question here for you. If somebody were to call and want to talk to somebody at Aruba, such as a systems engineer like yourself, could someone help a potential customer or end user to help them create a network that they needed to start from scratch?
Yeah, so yes. So what they would need to do is, says there are a couple of options here. So one, before they do that, they'd have the option of actually going to the community.arubainstanton.com page, right? Or you can go to the arubainstanton.com/support there as well. You can start a live chat session there if you'd like to. Or there's also a number that you can actually call as well. So actually on that support page, there's a link to a number. It's also within the application on the cloud portal. If you go to support, there's a number listed there that they could call as well to get assistance with initial setup or configuration. But initial setup, I assure you, is very simple, unless obviously there's some issue with the actual hardware itself. But outside of that, the basic setup is pretty straightforward and easy to do, to the point of really somebody with almost no technical background at all could do it. And that was our goal with it and all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Reggie. Sounds very, very helpful. And thank you for answering all of those questions. My apologies. It seems that I may have been the only one with some audio issues, but we got past it. Thank you to everyone. Yes, thank you for everyone attending today. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if anyone wishes to view any of the products mentioned or shown today, please visit us at www.microcom.us. And please remember, this webinar presentation has been recorded and will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel so you can see this presentation again. Reggie, thank you so much for your time. And until next webinar, we look forward to the next set of products and services you have to offer us. Everybody, have a fantastic day.
Thank y'all.